Syracuse has had a couple of down years for them. Of course, Jim Boeheim, a Hall of Fame coach, and they've won national titles. And he's been around forever, and it pretty much he runs the show on when he can step down to even mention this. But this is not the one, Garrett, yet. But after the game, they lost a tight game. When asked if he thought he'd be coaching the team he has, this younger team that he has the next year, I have no other plans. Listen, this has been the question of the day for 15 years. You know, he's a grumpy, angry. This isn't a new question. It's just the calendar going, well, he's 78. It's just the calendar. If it wasn't the calendar, if I was 65, no one would be saying anything. And I'm not going to retire just because it's the calendar. Anything can happen. Anything literally. We'll just see what happens. I don't say anything because I don't know. Then he started to go off on NIL. And, went after it. So then Brandon Knight, who played at Pittsburgh, he's an assistant at Rutgers, when asked about Jim Boeheim and talking about NIL and how NIL's ruining the sport, and that's why Mike Krzyzewski got out, and that's why Jay Wright got out, Brandon Knight said, next time ask him, Jim Boeheim, how many teams he bought before NIL was legal. Don't throw stones in a glass house. Remember, you've been coaching a lot of years, and a lot of us know who got paid.
Yeah, I'm not going to doubt Brandon Knight on this at all. So Jim Boeheim had Carmelo Anthony on his national championship team. And I'm not trying to besmirch the good name of Melo here, but you're telling me that Carmelo Anthony, in an era where guys like him were taking money to go anywhere, to go places, was pure as the driven snow?
One of the best one-and-dones ever.
So, yeah, there's, it's happened at a lot of places, and Jim Boeheim saying NIL is ruining the sport. Well, I don't know how much it's changed it all that much other than we know about it now. Now it's legal, that they say. I don't know from ruined. It's certainly complicated things, but come on. And I just tell you this, when Baylor played Syracuse in 2019 in the tournament, and they played them in the first round in Salt Lake City, they had a player who did not make the trip. The Syracuse media knew the player didn't make the trip, and they asked Jim Boeheim why he didn't make the trip. And Jim Boeheim stood up there and lied to them, and then, threw a lot of subterfuge out there, so I don't know what you're talking about. And then had to come to it after the game that Baylor drubbed him in, and then say, yeah, well, he wasn't here because of this legal issue and blah, blah, blah. And the whole Syracuse, beat writer group was like, why didn't you just tell us yesterday? What's the difference? What's going on here? And so that's the kind of cantankerous old coach that he is. That's what he's going to do, and he can complain about NIL all he wants, but again, you do that, and you got people like Brandon Knight who are gonna say we've probably got some receipts here.
Well, either adjust or die. I mean, it is what it is. It's not changing, and if you want to keep competing at the level that you're used to Syracuse basketball competing at, then you're gonna have to get with the times. Just bottom line. And if y'all read his quotes, it's a shot at his people as much as it is anything else. He says, in the quote, he's sitting there, Pittsburgh bought a team. Okay, fine. Wake Forest bought a team. Miami bought a team. But he also says, my big donor talks about it, but he doesn't give anyone any money. Nothing. Not one guy. Our guys make like $20,000. And then he rails on Wake Forest and Miami. So it sounds to me like he wishes his guy would pony up some more money, too. It's kind of a roundabout, message that he's trying to get out there, but I think it's a bad look to just single out teams. I kind of love it. I kind of love that he's just flat out saying, what he feels like is the truth, but it doesn't make him come across as the good guy. And I definitely didn't think that he probably had just teams that were all just wanted to play for Cuse and play for Boeheim and weren't ever looking for anything else during their careers at Syracuse, while, around the rest of the country, all of their peers were certainly being wined and dined, entertained, paid, what have you, to play at similar programs. So, yeah, I don't think his hands are clean by any means. I think he also took a shot at his people with the $20,000 remark, and the donor says things but doesn't give anyone any money. I think that was a message sent.
That would have been an interesting
phone call. I think he took some pot shots, obviously, at some rivals who are in a better place than he is. So, yeah, very much sour grapes there. And you guys do realize what happened after all this, right?
Yep.
He apologized.
I've got it in front of me.
Yeah.
Yep. I would like to clarify remarks I made at a conversation I had with a media member following our game Saturday evening. I apologize to the schools I mentioned. I believe the ACC member institutions are in compliance with NCAA rules governing name, image, and likeness. It was not my intention to imply otherwise.
No,
yes, it was.
Yeah,
yes, it was.
Okay, and tell me this. Riddle me this, people. What has Jim Boeheim done since that Syracuse team?
Carmelo?
Since Melo?
Golly, I don't know. I can't. There's nothing that stands out. A team that made a run.
25
I'm sure
years have passed.
Yeah. I would think there's got to be some other runs he's made.
They've been okay, but and he's won a national title, and that kind of puts him in rare air because there's not a lot of guys who have done that. There's how many active coaches have? He's one of the active coaches that has. Now that Coach K is retired and all that, like Roy Williams retired, so there's not a whole lot of guys sitting out there with a ring. But it's been a long time, and so his adapt or die is it's starting to
he needs to retire.
Yeah, I mean he almost.
Who was it recently that did this? An older coach. I can't. It was a football coach, I thought, that kind of got grumpy about this and then had to come back and apologize. I thought it was during last season.
I mean, Nick Saban, well, he didn't really have to apologize, but I mean,
Saban went after Jimbo because all that, and Jimbo went out. That was similar because he did bring up A&M. He's been there now since 1976. He has the one national title. In fact, and I feel like I'm pretty much a perspective of how many national titles certain teams have had, especially in the last 35 or 40 years. It surprises me because I remember they used to get close, but it surprises me that he has only the one. It does. In 2003 with Carmelo, who had the great run and ended up obviously as a hell of an NBA player. That really surprises me. I would have thought there was one other one that he slipped in there somewhere.
I can understand people not feeling great about the direction of college sports because they just have the opinion that it's all being, ruined by players getting paid. I think that's a bit silly. I think it was, I just don't know how you look at it. Like if you want to, like I don't love the rules or lack thereof, but I don't think that players getting paid is like the end all be all. Now it sounds like he's got a problem with a little bit of, I think he's got a problem with his players not getting paid by his booster, and then he's got a problem with others getting paid elsewhere. But I don't think it's an indictment on NIL, and so therefore, go talk to your booster guy. Go talk to him. Don't sit there and paint Miami or Wake Forest
was he doing, Craig, like Saban was doing and sending a message to his own boosters?
So.
Yeah,
I think so in a certain way. But I also don't know if he was even thinking that intentionally with it. Like I think he was just popping off and being an old man on a rant and said what he said, and probably and obviously said some things he shouldn't have said because either he decided or someone at the school decided that he needs to apologize for it.
They did go to the Final Four in 13 and 16, so maybe knocking on the door was why I thought maybe there was another one that they had.
That's fair enough. That's
a pretty good run.
I left that. So, yeah, it's hard. It's really hard.
He's been 5 Final Fours.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he's also now at a point where clearly he's having trouble raising money for his program, which a lot of coaches hit that point. Mm-hmm. You know why Saban was so good at it? Saban didn't call it he didn't point anybody out. Jim Boeheim might have said, Fred is not giving me enough money because he's like our donor. He says he does. And so that guy knows exactly what he's talking about. Nick Saban was sitting in front of a room of them, just telling them how much money other people were spending. That's what he was doing. He was doing the other party in this thing is going to do this unless you stop them. That was more of a political speech than an athletic one that Nick Saban made, and he used a tactic that works on most people. Oh my God, I'm scared. My enemy might do something. Let me throw money at it or do this or decide this thing. So that's what he did. What Jim Boeheim did was specifically call somebody out. What Jim Larrañaga is doing at Miami with the help of John Ruiz that's pretty much what you're going to have to do now. Especially at programs like Miami that are not classic basketball programs. To get those guys, to keep those guys. Jim Larrañaga has been in the portal. I mean, he built that team he had last year out of the portal, got guys that were in their third team. Maybe even one of their guys was on fourth team that he'd been, navigating the transfer portal, and they made a good run. And that's how he had to do it because you can't just be Kansas. You can't just decide, wake up one morning and go, we're Kansas, just like them. You can't do it. You can't do it. I'm Kentucky. I'm Duke. You can't do it. It's years and years and years of that. Jim Boeheim is that, but clearly he's waning, and it's probably a problem of him being the guy that the donors want to hear from.
James Gregg, is there a college basketball coach, men's basketball coach, crankier than Boeheim? Somebody mentioned, and it's not. Bob Huggins gives you that impression. He's actually just like they call him, a teddy bear. But he can give you, he can be intimidating if you don't know of him or have not been in front of something with a media session with him.
To answer your question, no. I think, Huggins has his angry moments, but, I mean, Boeheim's definitely the cranky old man, and that's why I say just retire already because, at this stage, you've had a Hall of Fame career. There's been, good, bad, ugly, what have you, but if you're at this point and you're complaining about, like, Miami's buying a team or what, just either get your donors in line and get them strapped up with cash to help you out or just get out of the game because it's not changing to the way that it was when you were taking, Mello and company to the title game.
I'll tell you, Bob Huggins is cranky with two types of people. People who wear black and white striped shirts. He's cranky with them. That's certainly what he's cranky with. And players on his own team who don't do what he asked them to do. Outside of that, he's a pretty chill dude. You go to, you watch him in a game, lay into the officials for 20 straight minutes and a half, and then in the post-game press goes, well, we just weren't getting the calls.
But do you really think I don't even think he's at that point anymore. Not that he doesn't still have fire, but he's not one that really is laying into too many officials.
It's kind of like
he may have been earlier on.
Yeah, he's kind of like a pitcher with 3 pitches, and he only throws 2 of them now, but the third one comes out when he really wants to fool you. Like, that's probably what it is. Like, he knows that he's got the speed if he's got to, but he also kind of knows how things are, and he knows when to pick his spots. Look, I remember one of his most famous complaints was after a Kansas game because he was saving it up. Like, he knew he was going to get some heat for it. He knew that the conference was going to be happy, but he chose that, like, this is what I'm going to say now after this game where we got, out foul shot by twice as many in a game that had that went how it went. So that's what he said. So he's not, like, I wouldn't call him cranky. I would call him, or cantankerous like Jim Boeheim. He's completely different. He's pretty mellow, actually. I think he's pretty laid back generally.
Paxton agreed, Craig. He can't stand the refs. He had 2 techs against Oklahoma. Sometimes refs need help. And then also S. Michael DeHart, it's that West Virginia blue-collar, Craig and Paul and David, the blue-collar attitude. He was brought up that way. All right, that's kind of who he is. That's his DNA. Back before, when something brought up about Boeheim, someone mentioned he misses his buddies John Thompson, Rolly Massimino, and Lou Carnesecca. Back in the day, that's what, even back, you can go to the back days. You had Bob Knight and some others, Al McGuire and others who were a part of coaching at that time.
I also think that, and maybe it'll come back around again, but we're in an era where the cranky jackass coach is just not going to play like it used to. It's just not. Things are different. Times are changing. And you can't be Woody Hayes anymore. You can't be those guys. So, it's as hard. It's an adjustment. When you've done something one way for a long time, it's an adjustment. But, 78 years old, he's
Woody
not going to
Hayes,
change.
That was 50 years ago.
But that's my point, though. Like, you can't.
Well, Bo
Pelini's
kind of an example.
Yeah, you can't be Bobby Knight.
Kind of ran himself. He's still coaching, but ran himself out of it.
You can't chuck chairs across the court. You can't, you can't rule by fear so much anymore. And you can't be Urban Meyer. You can't do it. The chickens always come home to roost.